Victoria got married to Brian just a year ago. She fell in love with him almost instantly when they first met. He was a cheerful and kind person who helped her with everything, and he seemed perfect to her. When he finally confessed his love for her and proposed to start a family a month later, the girl was over the moon with happiness. The young couple lived relatively peacefully. There were hardly any scandals, just minor arguments that they quickly made up after. However, Victoria was somewhat bothered by her mother-in-law Camilla's interference in her life. Periodically, she tried to instruct the young girl on how to cook, iron, or clean properly, but this didn't really bother the cheerful girl. Besides, they didn't interact with their mother-in-law very often. When Brian announced their vacation plans for July, Victoria was ecstatic. He had saved money all year for this trip. Delighted, the girl threw her arms around her husband and said, "Thank you, my love. I haven't been to the seaside in over 10 years, and I've been longing for it. I know how many times you told me about your dream of visiting the coast again." Brian hugged his wife lovingly and looked into her eyes, saying, "Of course. I remember, and I cherish you. So get ready, we're going on vacation in 3 weeks." That night, Victoria went to sleep feeling the happiest she had ever been, not suspecting that a cruel twist of fate awaited her very soon. It's more fun with three, Victoria thought as they approached the trip. 2 weeks before the vacation, she decided to ask her husband about their plans for the trip. "Brian, honey, have you already decided where we're going for our vacation?" she asked, looking excited as her young husband returned from work. "Dear, I'm tired." Brian smiled wearily. "Yes, I figured it out. I even found a place we can rent." "Rent a place?" Victoria raised an eyebrow, surprised. "But darling, we plan to stay in a hotel to avoid the hassle of cleaning, laundry, and cooking." Brian nodded. "Yes, I know. But we can't afford a hotel for all three of us." "Three?" Victoria squinted at him in suspicion. "What do you mean by three? I only see you and me." "Victoria's mother, Jane, is joining us," Brian replied. "She really wanted to come. She hasn't been anywhere in ages, longer than you, and she's eager to relax." Victoria felt a twinge of frustration, as she had hoped to spend some quality time alone with her husband. However, she understood that Brian loved his mother and wanted to make her happy. So, instead of arguing, she chose not to protest. The only hope she clung to was that her mother-in-law would give them some alone time. The next evening, they reached their destination. Although Jane had arrived late in the day, Victoria still marveled at the beautiful sea air and local landscapes. She felt like a little girl ready to revel in the excitement of anything new. Upon arrival at their rented cottage, they were greeted by a friendly hostess who provided them with keys, showed them around, and then headed back to her own home. After dining on the remnants of the food they'd brought with them, they all went to sleep. Victoria cuddled up to Brian, feeling like the luckiest person in the world. Her euphoria continued until the next morning, when her mother-in-law woke her up with a loud voice, and Victoria nearly screamed in frustration. Victoria woke up early, even though they were on vacation, and her son was sleeping right beside her. "Enough sleeping? Get up!" Jane's loud voice startled Victoria, who couldn't comprehend the need to wake up so early on a vacation. "We're here to enjoy ourselves. Why get up early?" Victoria muttered. Jane placed her hands on her hips. "How are we going to eat? Are we going to subsist on sea air?" Victoria sat up, now fully awake. "I thought we could go to a cafe. There's one just 2 houses away. You're only thinking about squandering." Jane pursed her lips. "Get up, and let's make a list of groceries." Victoria sighed heavily but reluctantly, got out of bed, and followed her irate mother-in-law to the kitchen. There, they engaged in a lengthy argument about the list of essential groceries. Jane insisted on preparing a hearty hot dish, while Victoria thought that in such hot weather, nobody would want to eat borscht or stew. She suggested they stick to cold appetizers and salads. Victoria had come to terms with the idea that they would only prepare what her mother-in-law approved of. But then Jane surprised her again. "Okay, you go to the market," Jane said. "I'll go back to sleep. I haven't slept enough." Victoria was baffled. "You're telling me that you've made up these dishes, and now I have to cook them myself?" Jane seemed unfazed. "Yes, go to the market. I'll take a nap. I'm tired. You're young and full of energy." Victoria entered her room, nearly overcome by the situation. "My legs hurt," she protested. "It's quite a distance to the market. I won't manage it all on my own." Jane replied, "Don't be so fussy. You'll be fine. Just make sure you don't overexert yourself." Victoria was left standing, her mind spinning. "So you've come up with these dishes, but I'm the one who has to cook them." Jane sarcastically remarked, of course, as if I'm the young housewife here. "You're the one who got married. Now you have to feed your husband." With those words, she closed her door. Victoria let out a heavy sigh and began preparing to go to the market. She understood that arguing was futile. After a lengthy ordeal in the kitchen, she finally managed to escape to the beach, with Brian accompanying her. Victoria decided it was the right time to have a heart-to-heart with her husband. "Igor," she began as they settled on the beach, "doesn't it seem inappropriate to turn me into a cook during my vacation? It's unfair coming from your mother." Igor waved away her concerns. "She's just used to living by certain rules. Don't worry about it. I'll talk to her. For now, let's just relax." Victoria contemplated this and decided to postpone such conversations. Instead, she opted to enjoy the beach, the sun, and the sea. The following day passed relatively peacefully, and Victoria started to unwind. However, in the evening, Camilla had another surprise in store for her. As soon as she entered the vacation home after a trip to a nearby shop, her frozen mother-in-law pounced on her. "Where have you been, dear? Socks are supposed to be clean, and the shirt should be ironed. Your husband can't leave the house like this. First of all, I don't quite understand why all his socks are dirty already," she said, her eyes filled with astonishment. Victoria could only roll her eyes at the audacious remark. "Secondly, we had an agreement about laundry and ironing. There's a nearby hotel where, for a reasonable fee, they provide these services. As a matter of fact, that's where we were supposed to go. And thirdly, where on earth is he planning to go out? I told you, he's out tramping around." Victoria scornfully huffed. "Ironing and laundry should be done at the hotel for money. And what about you, Jane?" Jane replied condescendingly, "You don't have to worry about it. I came here to relax just like you did, not to play the role of a servant. Besides, you left my question unanswered. Where is Brian going to go when it's nearly nighttime outside, and he certainly didn't invite me anywhere? Why is he going out, and why wasn't I informed? Less partying would have been better." Her mother-in-law smirked. "Well, now we're heading to a cafe. As for you, you should have thought about it earlier. So while we're enjoying ourselves at the cafe, you'll have time to do the laundry and ironing." Victoria couldn't hold back her frustration. "And why should I be the only one doing this? Brian," she yelled, and her voice probably echoed even along the coastline. She immediately regretted raising her voice. Brian came out of the room slowly and looked questioningly at his wife. "What's with the shouting? What happened?" "What do you mean, what happened?" Victoria's anger was boiling over. "I told you yesterday to talk to your mom. I came here to relax too, not to be your personal maid. Yesterday she called me a spendthrift just because I suggested having breakfast at a cafe. And now it turns out you're going there together while I have to play the role of Cinderella. What am I supposed to make of this?" Brian sighed and even covered his eyes with his hand. "Why shout like that? I want to take my mom to the cafe. No one but me is going to do that. And it's not a big deal to iron my t-shirt for you. Like you've never done that at home." Tears welled up in Victoria's eyes, but she continued, "I'm here to relax, just like you. Not only are we not spending time together, but now you're trying to turn me into a personal maid. I can't help but feel like this." Brian let out another sigh. "I'm not exaggerating." He took Jane by the arm. "We'll be back soon. Please tidy up and sort things out in the house." With those words, they headed to the door, and his mother-in-law, with a mocking smile, turned and closed it. Victoria sat on the bed and started to cry. She was unsure of how to proceed or what to do next. After the emotionally charged encounter, she felt somewhat calmer as time passed. She decided to take a walk along the promenade to clear her thoughts. Eventually, she found herself in a small cafe, ordering a glass of crisp white wine. As she settled at a separate table, gazing thoughtfully at the sea, a cheerful voice suddenly came from nearby. "Hello." A girl of about her age looked at her with a friendly smile and sparkling brown eyes. "Do you mind if I sit here? All the tables are taken, and I'd rather not join those guys with shots. And you, like me, seem to be enjoying a light wine." Victoria glanced around and noticed that the cafe was indeed crowded. She smiled at the stranger. "Of course, feel free to sit. I'm not expecting anyone." "Thanks," the girl replied, taking a seat across from her. "You can call me Jane. And your name?" Victoria answered with her husband Brian's last name. "I'm Victoria. Brian calls me Vicky, so we can do the same." The two chatted away nearly the entire night. Jane noticed the sadness in Victoria's eyes and asked her about it. It turned out that Jane herself had recently gone through a divorce, and the main cause of her conflicts with her husband was his mother. The conversation flowed so naturally that they didn't realize how late it had become. As they approached the rented cottage, Victoria had a clear plan in her mind for what to do next. When she reached the front door, she didn't even have a chance to open it herself before Jane, who must have noticed her from the window, rushed out, exclaiming, "Found you, you lousy liar." You wore that crap straight from the doorstep. She hadn't cooked, cleaned, or done laundry at home. Instead, she had been gallivanting around. By the next morning, she had a big happy smile on her face, as if she found a resort match in Jane. "Jane, if I'm so terrible, I'll just leave. Let me go into the house and collect my things." "What do you mean, leave?" Her mother-in-law gasped. "Oh, so you really did find yourself a lover, you ungrateful wretch." Victoria waved her hand. "Grateful? No, I just want to enjoy my vacation, and with the two of you, it's impossible. That's why I'm going home to have some time to myself. I need it. I'll decide what to do next." Amid the shouts and scolding of her mother-in-law, Victoria gathered her things and left the house. The sea no longer seemed as magical to her. But what hurt her the most was that Brian, who had been sitting in the kitchen and seen everything, didn't say a word. It was as if he didn't care. That wounded her deeply. As Victoria was already on the train, her phone rang. "So, what do you think?" Camilla's voice, cheerful and familiar, asked. Victoria replied, "I agree." She felt the weight lifted off her shoulders. "Wait for me in a week. You're a smart girl." Jane laughed. "As for your goat, think carefully." Victoria hung up and smiled. She decided to accept Camilla's offer to work at her advertising agency. Camilla was the daughter of a wealthy father who had given her the business of her dreams. However, she wasn't just a manager. She genuinely embraced the ideas she and Victoria had discussed the previous night. As for Brian, Victoria would wait until their vacation was over to talk to him. But something told her that their love story had ended, and it would likely culminate in a divorce. She couldn't easily forgive his deafening silence and indifference, especially after their vacation was ruined. Clearly, his mother was more important to him, even when she was in the wrong, but that was his choice.